Hi, everybody. Today I have with me Deidre, and Deidre and I connected through another guest I have on a podcast, which, when this one comes out, hers might be later. I don't know yet for sure, but she was kind enough to connect the two of us. And I believe Deidre has a journey that she'd like to share and would probably relate with a lot of other people. And so let's start with that. Deidre, would you mind just sharing like a little bit about yourself, and then we'll kind of get into the journey of how you got to be where you are.
Sure. So, hi, John. Thank you for having me on your podcast. I'm really enjoyed the guests that you've had in the past. So, looking forward to our conversation today. And so what I do is I actually work in the field of education and I work with the babies. So I work with preschools and school districts that have pre-K classrooms. And I go in and I do a couple of different things. One, what I like to say is I support programs when they have children with challenging behaviors. And I support programs when they have adults with challenging behaviors, because we know they're both in the workplace. And so, one of the things that I do is I go out and I do training or consulting and help those programs develop policies, procedures, and systems. And then, when I do training, especially with the adults, I do a lot of leadership training and what I call mindset work. So I truly believe that leadership is a mindset, not a role. And so as we're all leaders, then what are the mindsets or the characteristics or the things that we get to put in place for ourselves so that we're showing up as our best self, either at work or at home, and certainly both places. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Okay. And we'll come back to like exactly, what you really do to help out. But not one person is just gonna wake up one day and go, I want to be a leader, right? So
Right.
would you mind jumping into and go back to like when you think that your journey began, where you thought to yourself that I do want to be a leader and I do want to teach people?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to bring you back even before that. And the reason I say that is because I don't know, maybe about 5 or 6 maybe even 7 years ago, I came across an old picture of myself when I was in the Brownies, which is right before becoming a Girl Scout. So, around 5 or 6 years of age. And I started sharing that picture whenever I did training. And it wasn't until a little bit later that I realized, oh my gosh, from a young age, starting with being a brownie, I have always been about leadership, but I never knew it. So when you think about, the Girl Scouts, it's all about leadership, right? And really supporting young girls and young women as they grow into and think about what it means to be a leader. And so again, even from that very young age, it's always been a part of who I am. And as I've, gotten older and, moved into my professional life, I was the person that always went out and sought more training, more education. I went through college and got my degree in college, went back and got my master's so that I can go back and coach or teach and train other adults. So really looking, at the leadership from that perspective. And then, even that wasn't enough, John. I'm a perpetual learner. So then I went back and got my certification as a life coach. And the reason I did that was because in a lot of the work that I was doing, especially in the coaching work, especially in the world of education, we tend to think about it, through our minds, right? We're learning skill sets, we're learning, concepts, knowledge about how to teach and, when and who and where to teach it. And what I was finding was that, well, yes, I could coach and people would learn. It wasn't until I was able to say what I call touch the heart that I saw transformation, like literal shifts. People, when they got it, they just would light up. And when they would make that shift to that, or gain that understanding, you literally saw their whole body change, and the way they were sitting, the way they were standing, the way they were interacting change. And that's where my skill sets came from. Being a life coach was actually learning how to, one, really, really, really deeply listen. We call that listening underneath the listening, right? Or a lot of people think of it as reading between the lines. Well, this is between the lines and then way underneath them. And what aren't people saying? Because that's where the work gets to be. And when I moved into doing that work and combined that with my other coaching skills, that's when I really started to see a lot of people change and shift. And so that's why I feel like, again, when we talk about leadership, it really is a mindset. I mean, of course, there are skills that come with it, but what's that saying? You can have the best tools in the toolkit, but if you're not inclined to use them, what good are they? And that's actually a mindset. And so I've got these tools. How am I going to use them? Who am I going to use them with? What am I going to go out and do that so that I can actually leave, a mark or my legacy in the world? And so that's kind of where I am now. I don't know if I answered your question or not.
So you started back when you were a brownie, and then you were going to the scouts, and you got all your degrees and everything. Yeah. Is there any a point along the line or along the way there that you probably thought self-doubt to yourself and like, what am I doing? Is this going to work? Was there anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. Whole way through. Most of us have those doubts. I mean, it's the thing about, do I have what it takes? Especially now in my role as a consultant, because as a solopreneur, right, I have to go out and actually market myself in addition to actually doing the work. And so there are a lot of doubts. And even doubts, gosh, even today, oh, I'm looking at somebody's website. Oh my gosh, that's a great website. Oh, my website sucks. Oh my, I don't know if it. So we all have these doubts. The question is, how can we move through them quicker, sooner, faster? So, I'm a big person around, analogies or metaphors. And, it's like going, climbing up the mountain and down in the valley. We all have mountains and valleys. And in fact, without the valleys, there wouldn't be any mountains. And to think that we're always going to stay at the top of the mountain is like, that's just, disappointment waiting to happen. So yes, I've had lots of doubts. And what made a difference for me is community, who I got to be around, um, to support me in my belief, in, my dreams, my goals. That actually became critical. Um, because when I wasn't able to hold on to my dreams, when those self-doubt, right, or that negative self-talk really kicks in and it's really loud and you can't see beyond it and you can't hear anything else, other people were holding the dream for me. And and holding it up for me to see it, saying, you can do this, this is your dream, you got this, stay with it. And I would say that was a critical part of my journey, and continues to be.
So yeah, expanding your circle with around the right people, right? Because
Hmm.
you want the yay sayers, not the naysayers. And then
Hmm.
there are, yeah, I like your analogy with the mountain, right? And then you got the valleys and stuff. So I would look at it as you're going up the mountain, but there's another peak that's taller.
Oh,
So
yes.
to get there, right, you have to go back down a little bit and then go back up, right? And it's just going to keep on going. Um,
Yes.
but yeah, I feel like self doubt plays a lot. in a lot of people's eyes, or somebody else is bringing them down because they don't want you
Mhm.
to grow and
Mhm.
become better than them. So, and then I think you touched on this a little bit too, is, there's a rewarder usually on the other side of fear. So we just got to get through that barrier, and I'm sure the people that support you support them as well, because they probably have those issues as well. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
that's, even if it's your coach helping you, sometimes they're going to be like, hey, I need some help here too. But
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, but what you're doing is great, and you're sounds like you had a great journey so far getting to where what you're doing. And
Mhm.
then so what led you into the preschool and stuff? What got you right in there, and that's basically your baby, right?
Yeah. It was one of those things that when I was first thinking about going to college and they ask you, what do you want to major in? And I had not a clue.
Mm.
And as I was filling out, the college application, I could hear my grandmother in the back of my head saying, "Oh, she's really good with kids. She likes kids." And I said to myself, "Oh, well, why don't I go into education?" And because I always had this thought of being marketable, and I was like, okay, well, if I'm a teacher, I can have work wherever I go. And so as I thought about it, why preschool? I actually had a dual degree when I first went to school. So it was preschool and elementary, so that I would have a lot to choose from. And then as I kind of, you know, interned here and interned there, I just fell in love with the younger children. It's just something about the way they see life, right? Like everything is so new to them. It's so wondrous. And when they're learning things, they just, the joy is just unbridled. It's just raw. And so I'm one of those weird nuts. So I have to be kind of careful, especially in today's world, because I love kid watching. Like I'll just, if they're, young kids around me, I just stop and watch. So I have to make sure that people aren't thinking I'm weird or something. And because I do that, but it's just so much fun watching them figure things out. Because they just go to it without, most of them without a care in the world. And even those that have coming from adverse circumstances, when they have the chance to play, they do. And it's a lot of fun.
It is. Yeah. And so I'm sorry, what ages would they be? Like 5?
Yeah. So when I say preschool, I'm usually talking about 3, 4, 5, 6 years of age. Yeah.
Yeah, so they still have that imagination, and I don't know everything, so maybe you can help me out here. Is that like the point where somebody can kind of like bring them down too, and then they kind of stop?
Absolutely. So there's a couple of things that people don't realize. One is that for the most part, our self-identity, who we think we are, tends to get set by the time we're 6 and 7 years of age. So when you start thinking about that, absolutely. If you're around, like you said earlier, naysayers. So if you're always being told you're bad, you're wrong, you're stupid, you're dumb, you're fat, you're ugly, whatever, and that's your mirror. And that's the world telling you who you are at that age. You believe it because you don't know any different. And so you grow up and you believe that that's who you are. So a lot of our children, if they're told they're bad or wrong or stupid, grow up and say, "Well, I'm going to be the best bad little kid I could possibly be." Right? Or if I'm stupid, then, I'm stupid. And they start, letting go of those dreams that they've had, or, those wishes, because it now seems like it's, further out and away from their grasp. So yes, and it's not just, adults. We've all been there when we've heard and seen children be mean to, to other children. And so, that can start very early. That can start at age 3, 4, and 5 years of age, especially if it's not caught or children aren't taught any differently.
Yeah. So do you assist in something like that where you, I mean, is
I,
that your leadership? Yeah.
I do. So when I go in and I do training with teachers, I go in and I do a lot of, social emotional development, right? Where we go in and literally teach teachers how to teach children to be kind. I mean, when you say somebody, be nice, what is nice look like, John? What is it, what are the skill sets to being nice? And, what does it feel like? What does it sound like? So being very, very concrete, right? So, being kind could mean a whole bunch of things. It could be using gentle hands instead of, whacking somebody, or, sharing or taking turns instead of, I want that toy, so I'm just going to take it. It could mean a lot of things. So really helping our teachers to literally teach that to children so that they understand it and they're not left wondering or having to try and figure it out by trial and error. And then when I go in and work with the adults, the teachers around their leadership, it's the exact same thing. Right. So what does being kind mean when you're standing in your leadership? And so it takes on more dimensions. So for example, is being kind, saying something to somebody to make them feel good, even if you don't believe it? Are we really being kind if we're, what do I say? A lot of times, again, using a metaphor analogy, I talk about a situation like a booger in the nose. Like I just love that situation. And a lot of times I'll ask people how many of us, and I always include myself because I've done this, has seen somebody walk by, or we know somebody, or we're talking to somebody and they have a booger in their nose, and we don't want to say anything to them because we don't want to embarrass them or humiliate them, and we think we're being kind. And in reality, then we let them walk off, and we're letting them walk off with this booger hanging out their nose, right? So really, how kind is that? Right? So, when we think about it, what does it really mean to stand in your leadership and be kind? It's John, John, maybe, touching your nose so oh, okay, something,
Sure.
something's happening there, right? Or, or just discreetly saying to you, "Hey, you might want to grab a tissue, John." That's being kind. But in order for me to do that, I actually need to step into my leadership, because often when we're saying, oh, I didn't want to tell them because I didn't want to make them feel bad, what we're really saying, what's really happening is that I feel bad. I'm feeling awkward. And I don't want to feel that way. So I don't want to say anything. But for me to really step into my leadership and own this is going to be awkward for both of us, and do it anyway.
That's good. That's a good way to put all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Turn the
It's
nose. Yeah.
fascinating. Yeah, I love that scenario because we've all been there. We've either had it or we've seen it or both. So
You're right. And then that person walks away and they're probably going to go see somebody more important. And, you didn't make that
yeah.
time. So
And then when they find out, they're mad. Oh my gosh, you let me walk away with a booger in my nose. And it's
exactly.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so,
Yeah. Yeah.
who did we really serve in that moment?
That's true. That's true. I have a question for you. I don't know if it's, I know you're into preschool and stuff, but so at a young age, right? They can learn to, feel down, the people leading them, they could be good or bad, right? And then they could change the way their thoughts are. Now, some
Mhm.
point in our lives, I, somewhere we become adults, and I feel like 20s, 30s, maybe, or somewhere, for some people, they make a switch and they go, oh, I want to become better. I want to do something like that. Do you, yeah, I just want to see if you have any thoughts on that. What would cause something like that?
I think for each person it's different, but in my experience, it's usually either you know, it's because of something painful,
Mhm.
right? So something happened and oh my gosh, I don't want that to happen again. So I got to choose differently. Or there's some vision and oh my gosh, that is so great. I got to change something so that I can go after that. And I think it was Michael Beckworth. I probably didn't say his name right. Sorry, Michael. But and he's a a really well-known spiritual leader, and I'm not going to say it and do it justice, but it's something like the pain pushes you until your vision pulls you. And so most of us operate from one of those two places. And so and we see it all the time. So for example, the person who gets sick and then when they get better they're like, okay, say they had a heart attack or something. Okay, that was really crazy. I'm going to change my diet, I'm going to change my exercise because I don't want that to happen again, because I had this startling or brutal awakening. Or it was something again that was just so beautiful, or something, a desire. Oh my gosh, I want that, or I want to be like that. Okay, how do I figure out how to get there? And then that's when we step into conscious decision on both sides. So a lot of us, I have to say, are what we call sleepwalking. We're going through our day here, day in and day out, doing the same thing in and out, but we're not really conscious. And so when you really start asking people, what do you want? It's usually tend to be surface, right? And so then we, take them through take them through it 5 times. What do you want? And they'll say a lot of times it's something like, oh, more money. Okay, why do you want more money? Oh, so I can, you know, um, buy a nice house. Why do you want a nice house? Oh, because I want to live in a place that's safe and comfortable. Oh, why do you want to live in the safe? So you keep digging down and down further and further until you get to this spot where it's like, oh, I want that house because I want it to be an extension of me. I want a place where I can go back and and walk in and just be me, either to let go of the world or to sink into it in a different way. And it's then you're like, oh, aha, that's it, that's the kernel. And again, you can always tell when you actually get to it, because the body changes, the whole demeanor changes. People, they'll light up, they'll spark, um and then aha, you got it. And once they're there, then it's easy to step into the work, because oh, now I really know what I want, why I want it. It's gonna fuel, um it's gonna fuel my actions, right? It's going to be that motivator for me. It's like, oh, I don't, those days when I don't want to get up and go to work, but it's like, okay, but I'm going to go because I know that it's actually helping me to fuel my dream of getting that house.
That's a great answer. Yeah. So yeah, you get to. I've been starting to say that a lot. You get to do it. Not that you have to do it. You get to do it.
Yes,
Right.
yes,
Um,
yes.
I want to see if we can spin this and go back to the preschool then. Do you
Hmm.
see like young kids that might be like put down a lot and they still are so resilient that they still want to do what they imagine doing? You know what I mean? Like they fight through whatever their teacher's saying, like you can't do this, you can't do that, and they continue to do good. They want to do good, right? So they continue to do what that path is. Do you see that?
I do. And we got to remember that many of our children are coming from some really not good situations, right? So a lot of times when we get those children especially, those are the ones where it matters the most about the quality of the teacher. Right. So, and again, it's something that I say to teachers all the time, because they'll, complain or be upset about those children who are coming in and misbehaving or don't know this or don't know that. And I'm like, those are the ones who really need us, because the ones who are coming in, that know how to behave and know all of these other skill sets, they obviously are having, other resources at home. They don't need us. It's the ones who are coming in, who are the hardest to love, that need the most love. And so when we come in, you do what I call pour into them, right? And a lot of it's just loving on kids, especially at this age. It's different in elementary because you're more around teaching skill sets, right? Like hardcore skill sets and concepts. In preschool, it's all about just loving on those children. And it's not, of course, that's not all we do, but a big part of it. And I can't begin to tell you how many of them will turn around and call you, mom by mistake, right? Or dad by mistake, which speaks to the relationship, right, that actually goes into working with children at that age. And knowing that we can actually shift and change the trajectory of that child's life literally by pouring into them at that age. So, I like to call, the teachers and the people that work with young children, brain architects, because we are literally building the foundations for brains to grow, like literally. And so we have the opportunity to have these children come in from all kinds of situations. And by just being with them day in and day out, right? That steady, loving presence, that structure, and the way we're modeling about how to be with the children actually will shift and change them. And the coolest thing about it is that we don't think of it this way, but young children, well, children in general, have the ability to go back and impact and influence their families. And so now we're actually influencing families, right? That ripple gets bigger, just by what we're doing with the children.
That's one way to look at it. I'm sure that's a little tough for the kid to say, "Hey, no, we gotta do this, mom and dad." But yeah, I guess it could work if he keeps showing up differently every day when he comes home, you know?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
a lot of times it's not difficult at all because they don't know any better. I can believe to or begin to tell you how many times a parent will come in and tell us the story about how they were driving down and somebody cut them off and they maybe swore or got upset, and then the child from the back is saying, use kind words, mommy. Right. I mean, and that's it. That's all it takes, right? Because what are you going to say to that, right? The child's not being rude or disrespectful. They're just, this is what we're learning in school. So, you know,
Yeah, respond instead of react, and
yeah,
and
yes.
yeah, I like that. I appreciate your work and what you're doing, and that is definitely a young age to work with and to build these kids into hopefully great adults, and
Mm-hmm.
carry on something. But how does somebody reach out to you to use your services to help grow as a leader?
Well, a couple of ways. They can reach out to me by email at, Deidre Ann Harris. Or actually, let me give you my business email. So that would be Deidre.Harris at teamagreements.com. So Deidre.Harris at teamagreements.com, or they can actually even go to my website, which is teamagreements.com, and reach
Great.
out to me from there.
And do you have to physically go into these classes to help out, or do you do virtual?
I do virtual. In fact, quite a bit of my consulting and coaching is virtual. And about half of my training is virtual and half of it is on site or in person.
Okay. All right. That's good to know.
Yeah.
So I have a question I ask everybody at the end, and I know
Okay.
you shared a whole bunch of information already, but what but what are the three key things you learned and used along your journey?
Oh, the three key things. I would say listen to your intuition. That's key. Whenever I haven't, I just have gotten in trouble. I've regretted it every single time. So listen to your intuition. Another one is I touched on it earlier. Build your community, right? Your community is key, 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 key. Build your community. And then the third I would say is um, have a compelling vision. And I qualify that with the word compelling because again, you want it to be something that pulls you forward, that gives you the gas, the juice, that lights you up, right? That just makes you passionate.
And that can always change too as you keep going. Yeah,
And it does, and it as it should, right? As you get older, things change and your circumstances change.
sure. I totally agree with you. Cool. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we close?
Um, No, I think that's it. Again, I just want to say thank you for the invitation. This was a lot of fun. It's not often we get the opportunity to just, talk about our life and, and how we got there. So the fact that you focus on that with your guests and provide that to, the different people out there, your audience is kudos, good for you. And thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All
You're
right. You too.
welcome.
Yep.